When I was a freshman in college taking geology, I was really confused about limestone because it just seemed like it was a sedimentary rock. I didn't really have a good handle on what exactly it was. And really all that matters is it's made of calcite, but it's a little more complicated than that. So you see I wrote that here, made of calcite. That's it. But what we find is that it can be made of calcite, this limestone, a couple different ways. So in the text that I'm using, we divide our rocks into, or sedimentary rocks into a couple different subtypes. And I want to focus in on inorganic chemical is what we call it, and then also biochemical. All right, so one thing to note is that calcite is made of calcium carbonate. So if we write CaCO3. And the calcium is positively charged and the carbonate is negatively charged. And so those ions or kind of molecules can be moving around in a system positively and negatively charged, all right? So if we think about like an ocean or a lake or something. So in that case with inorganic chemical, if we have these positive and negatively charged items just kind of floating around, and then the chemistry of that lake or ocean changes such that it can no longer hold on to the calcium or the carbonate, those will precipitate out of the solution. And that's our inorganic chemical example. So if we've got our body of water, here's the ground there, and we just start to kind of collect this stuff. And again, that's just the calciums coming out of the water and the carbonates coming out of the water and forming those solid crystals. That would be inorganic chemical, just precipitating out. The second example is our biochemical, and bio means life, so this is coming from a life process. So this happens when kind of the same thing happens. We have calcium and carbonate that joins, but it joins to make things like shell material. So this would be like the shells in a clam or something like that. And then eventually that clam dies, the shell material collects on the bottom of the ocean and then forms this limestone that way. So down here, kind of same thing, let's say ocean, and we've got these clams that are sitting in there, but eventually they die and they collect. So we've collected those out, and then we form a rock from that. So in the top example, this limestone is what we call precipitated. Right, so precipitated from solution. And then in the bottom example, for these biological processes, this is actually collected. So that shell material or whatever it might be collected. So there's lots of examples of this. If these are really tiny little kind of grains, we call it chalk. We have what's called fossiliferous limestone, when you can see little chunky shells that have collected there. In the example above, you might hear of something like travertine, which actually is going to be created as water is flowing over a surface and that mineral precipitates out. But again, just the difference is one is precipitated, the other is collected from biological processes, but they're really all just called limestone because it's made of calcite.